Welcome to Queer Lodgings, the queer-led podcast about everything Tolkien. I'm Leah, and I'm here with my usual co-hosts, Grace.
Hello.
And Alicia.
Hello. Oh, I just got some Kevin McAllister going on there. I am so sorry. I'm sick, guys.
Well, it is winter, so it's the time of getting colds and getting sick. It's raining, it's kind of gross and dark outside, but you know what? We're not staying indoors today, you guys. Grab your thermos, some hot tea, a couple extra layers, and your saddlebags, because today we're heading to the stables and we're talking about the horse girls of Middle Earth. To help us out, we're joined by our good friend Cait Rottler, certified horse girl, TM. Cait, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Before we get going, can you tell our listeners a little more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am Cait Rottler. I am an ecologist by day, but in my free time, I spend a lot of time out at the barn with my horse. His name is Rocket. And in any given situation, I will gladly whip my phone out and just start showing you pictures of Rocket for no reason whatsoever.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, since I don't have kids, I have pets, and I just have so many pictures of them. And he's one of my favorite things to talk about. So,
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, I've had him since he was 16 and he's 24 now. So, yep. And he's the first horse I've ever had, but I always wanted a horse since the time I was a little kid. So he's kind of like my dream pony that I didn't get to have as a kid. Now I get to have him when I'm older and can actually like form good memories of that.
Aww.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, that's the whole reason that we brought you on today, because you are, as we said, a certified horse girl, and we need you to talk to us about some of horse girls and some of the like inherent like queerness that's, I think, held in the whole genre and I guess trope and stereotype even. Alicia, you found some you found some pretty great scholarship and also Urban Dictionary, which I don't know if that really counts as scholarship or not, but in a particular sense, it kind of is. Why don't we talk a little more about what a horse girl actually is?
Yeah, horse girls are. I mean, I never had money to own a horse and therefore never fell into horse girl category. But I've always been kind of like, I've always thought that horse girls were kind of queer adjacent. Even though
Yeah,
there's nothing like overtly queer about a girl who rides a horse, there's something that always struck me as being queer about it. And I've never
yeah,
really been able
same,
to put my finger on it.
right?
So when we were doing research for this episode, I thought, one, it would be good to just see what Urban Dictionary has to say about horse girls.
Just check in on what Urban Dictionary has to say.
Always
Always a good move.
I'm on Urban Dictionary more than I want to admit when new slang comes out that I just do not understand, because I know Urban
No.
Dictionary's got my back.
Yeah.
But there's one particular definition from 2017 sent me. Horse girl has some deeper than normal connection to riding horses and doing horse-related things since a young age. The reason as to why someone can be so connected to riding horses is not completely clear. Perhaps it is due to sexual arousal from repeated vagina on jostling saddle contact.
If you're doing that, you're riding wrong. Shit.
Oh man.
Right, that just sounds painful.
Ouch.
Tell me this was written by a man without telling me it was written by a man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Normally quiet, introverted, socially awkward girls, not nerdy in the traditional term of video games, anime, internet, etc., nerdy in the sense of odd hobbies. There is a high likelihood of being Catholic or religious.
Amazing.
This overall describes a very vanilla and bland person, so horse-related hobbies largely define this person's character in totality. Overall, they can be mildly attractive personally and physically, but not more than average. Of course, personal variations occur between all horse girls.
I'm glad that they allowed for that,
Right,
variation and nuance. Yeah.
Variation.
You know, I'm going to go ahead and skip right past offended and into the utility of this definition because
Sure.
delightfully, this person has told us that we can like horses as a way to be less attractive to this type of gentleman.
Right?
And that's just,
Yeah.
I think, a perk in my life.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that at no point does it mention something that, like, I'm familiar with, which is that horse girls are occasionally painted as, like, actually kind of mildly terrifying
Yeah.
because they regularly boss around one-ton beasts, and they'll just look at it and be like, "Dude, you're standing in my manure pile," and then poke them with a rake and tell them to back off.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't ever occur, to, like, me that that's a one-ton animal I'm bossing around. It's just Rocket. And then other people are like, "Oh my god, how are you just so comfortable around these giant animals?"
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I feel like this is what a lot of people kind of think about for Horse Girl, and I'm getting stuck a little bit on the high likelihood of being Catholic or religious. I'm like, where is the book genre, that the Venn diagram of the intersection of like Christian chick lit and horse girl lit? Like
Like,
there, I know that there's a large
Oh,
population of
I'm
books in
sure.
that Venn diagram.
I wonder if that comes from, like, the more, like, cowboy side of things
Mm.
sometimes, especially in American culture. I
Hmm.
think it would be different probably, like, over in Europe or something, but I don't actually know because I was around horse folks in Europe a little bit, and I know some of them, but that's, like, not part of the culture that I've ever super experienced.
Mm.
I think there is an element that makes sense to me where correlation is not causation, right? Like,
Right.
it is not being a horse girl leads you to Catholicism.
Or Catholicism leads you to
Of
horse
course.
girl.
But
Hmm.
I think there might be an element where if you are in a, like, restrictive social context,
Ooh, yeah.
the freedom and, like, connection to something external to yourself and perhaps the immediacy of your family and your community that you get by riding horses and the time to care for them and the time that you get to set aside in order to do that important task and everything is potentially, like, one of the ways that someone growing up in or living in a restrictive context like that can take some agency for themselves
Mm. Hmm.
and find that freedom.
Yeah, and, like, I feel like there's the embodied element of in order to ride well, you have to be very aware of your own body and how you're moving with another animal. In more restrictive, sort of religious environments, the body is not only something that's sort of, put to the side, but it's sort of actively immoral or actively evil and something that you want to transcend, and it's sort of like actually, there's kind of an element of transcendence, I think, in writing in which you're actually fully embodied with yourself and the creature that you're writing, which I think can be a really strong appeal to somebody who may or may not have that kind of relationship with their body and with other bodies, non-human or human alike.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna go here yet, but I think I am now. So, there's also this element of, like, not just in particularly restrictive parts of society, like, a lot of parts of our society and over a lot of generations too, like, as socialization changes and everything, talking about, like, menstruation and things like that, not necessarily, like, super common, something that is comfortable for a lot of people to talk about. But my mom grew up riding horses at her godmother's house. And the quiet rule for all of the girls was when you got your period, you went and rode, like you went and galloped.
Hmm.
And then you went in and like you took a hot shower. And the deal was like if you had your period and this is why you were doing this, somebody else would actually take over like caring for the horse after you rode and you'd go in and shower right away.
Hmm.
And so that staved off the endometriosis surgery that my mom had to have by a good
Hmm.
decade and a half.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, like, there are like emotional benefits and health benefits specifically for people who menstruate, people who are like given a lot of restrictions by society. Like, there's a lot of like freedom and good health things in being able to interact with horses and ride
And
horses and
there's a reason that hippotherapy is so popular both for physical and mental health or also just like disabilities.
Mm.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I've been told, I would have to actually check if this is medically accurate, so I may be spouting like a random old wives' tale that we tell in the horse world to make ourselves feel better. But the motion of a horse at the walk strongly mimics it activates the same muscles that you would use in walking without needing to use your legs. So it's a way to work your core if like your legs don't work. So I mean, I know I've had surgery on both ankles for riding related incidents. And when I was still on crutches, I could at least get up on the mounting block and throw my leg in a walking boot. Like, God bless my sainted horse. Throw my leg over my horse, and I could walk him around bareback, walk him around the field, just like for that half hour, I was not having to deal with the fact. And like, this was even over such a short term that I was so deeply frustrated by the fact
Mm,
that just like I was not physically capable of doing stuff. But on my horse, I was pretty much physically capable. Like I wouldn't have jumped in a riding boot or anything, but it was very much the physical capability that I was more or less used to.
mm.
And it kept me in some kind of a shape even when I couldn't, like, you're not going to be getting a whole heck of a lot of exercise when you're on crutches unless you're going into the grocery store and back because it's just not pleasant.
Right.
But that was like physical activity that I could handle. And actually, so was mucking stalls when I was off the crutches and just in the boot because
Yeah,
it's mostly upper body, a lot of upper
Yeah.
body.
totally.
So I know that on our social media and everything, we've alluded to, like, for all of us podcast co-hosts, like, life has been lifing a lot the last couple of months, and so we haven't gotten a recording session, and we've had to postpone planned sessions and things like that. For me, one of those reasons is that I've had some really terrible health issues this year, and one of the big things that I really, really wanted to be able to do is that every year for her birthday, my friend Joanna will bring a few of us to, it's a Girl Scout camp that does an adult horse weekend for the last,
Sounds amazing.
like their last event of the year before winter.
That's lovely.
And you spend like a day doing horse care and grooming and like mucking stalls if you want and stuff. And then you also get to do a couple of trail rides. And I was so determined to go and do this because it matters so much to me, and I got my trail rides in, and I got to see the horse. He's a little bit of a jerk, so I love him a lot,
Aw.
you know. And it was also huge. Like I had to have this entire medical care plan because the nearest hospital was 40 minutes away, and I had to know like exactly which ambulance company we would need to ask for and things like that. But I wanted to do it, and I had to go. I couldn't eat any of the food. I could only drink Ensure the entire time. Like it was ridiculous, and I still did it. And I felt so much better after being able to both accomplish that and then also literally the riding. Like it helped so much. So yes,
Aw.
horse is very therapeutic.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, we've been talking about like freedom in terms of riding horses and stuff, and I
Yeah.
really want to talk about Natalie Corinne Hansen a little bit. I found this particular academic while I was looking for a more suitable definition for what horse girls are. And
Love
this
it.
this woman, I am sure is a horse girl because her entire academic publishing history is how to talk to horses, how to
Oh,
ride
yeah.
horses, and then
Oh,
so
yeah.
much stuff about horse girls.
Hell yeah. I love it.
Yeah, and I just what a thing to like specialize in, but bless her because it gives me something more than what did this guy say? Jostling saddle contact.
Yeah.
Repeated vagina on jostling saddle
Indeed.
contact. Yes.
So like her
Ouch.
whole thing is that the horse girl trope is really tied up in the patriarchy's view of female sexuality and like agency and bodily autonomy,
Mm.
specifically as girls are coming of age.
Mm.
So you have
Mhm.
that large group who assume that horse girls are lesbians and or are riding the horses for sexual pleasure, or tied to that the love between a girl and her horse is a transitional developmental stage that will eventually lead to that love being transferred onto boys, and heterosexual reproductive sexuality is how she very specifically words it. Just gross.
It's
Yeah.
just men having a stench fantasy?
Yeah.
No,
Hmm.
I'm only partially joking. I did read an article about that. Oh boy.
Oh no.
How interesting.
Oh
Okay.
boy.
So in her book chapter Horse Crazy Girls Alternative Embodiments and Socialities, she specifically says this cultural narrative functions to retain the innocence of childhood while also constructing the female subject within a sexually accessible frame. By this, she's talking about the love
Ooh.
between horses and girls, which
Right. Gross?
it is incredibly gross in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
why do you need a frame in which to quote unquote safely sexualize children?
Yeah, and safely sexualize innocence and
Yeah.
innocent children that don't have that kind of agency and autonomy, and you're kinda like, "Oh, oh, hmm, yeah,
Yeah, I don't like that at all. And a lot
yeah,
of her work, what she is working towards is a more feminist reading of this horse girl trope, where the horse and girl relationship is, as she refers to it, a trans species way of discovering a girl's personhood through a physical bond with another body that allows her
mm,
to taste freedom through that mutual relationship. So this girl gets on the horse, and then as one, they are free.
yeah." They're free together and their bodies are physically free. It's sort of like, nobody can stop them or get in their way, like, there's always that moment in the Horse Girl movies where the girl is trying to flee basically and on her horse, and it's like, yeah, literally nobody can stop them, and that's the whole point. Yeah, I love that trans species discovery. I think that discovery through a very physical relationship is really fascinating and really, like, empowering. Like, I think it was kinda touching back on some of what we were talking about with relating how, like, our physical bodies sort of, relating to each other. I think that that's really cool.
Yeah, that's the kind of power young girls don't really have, right? Like we've touched on this a
Right.
lot thus far that you are wielding a large, terrifying beast. Like
Yeah.
what other time does an 11 or 12-year-old girl have that sort of power? Never.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's really huge that a lot of us end up reading horse girl books when we
Yeah.
are that young age and then around puberty and everything. So I'm sitting here with my wall of books behind me, and on literally the same wall as all of the Tolkien books is also the shelf of all of the Saddle Club books and Thoroughbred and ghost horse stories and everything that I collected and read as a kid
Mm.
because that almost closer to real life fantasy was just as freeing as fantastical settings.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we're talking specifically about horse girls, but I think there's also a lot to be said just for anyone that society kind of places in a powerless position. Like there is a lot of privilege and nastiness in the horse world. It can be incredibly toxic. But I've also seen some pretty incredible there are trainers who specifically have queer friendly barns, and they specifically go looking for students who may not have the money, and so they start a scholarship program that's quite often funded actually by other queer people who wished they'd had that growing up.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful as far as giving freedom to, I guess, anybody who's been put in that really powerless position by society.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
something good to speak about right now. We are talking about horse girls, so we are necessarily going to be using a lot of gendered language here, but it doesn't have to be a girl.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
People of marginalized genders.
Right. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think often marginalized experience in the same way that we often use gendered language ironically in saying girl and dude and whatever. In this context, we are explicitly referencing that as well, that, horse girl is not specifically just cis girls.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's one more thing I want to touch on before we start really digging into the meat of this. One of the places where Natalie Hansen gets kind of the backbone of this like horse crazy girls book chapter that I've been referencing is a visual artist by the name of Deborah Bright, who had an exhibit called Horse Crazy: Horse Tales, American Images and Icons from 1800 to 2000. She's discussing the incoming portfolios of visual art students who are trying to go into art school. And she sees all of these horse related images and says that she daydreamed of a whole nation of horse girls who shared this obsession, a fierce army of horse lovers, impervious to the contempt implicit in men's mockery, ignoring the social consensus that they would have moved on from horses to boys. These hopeful applicants were signaling their membership in a subversive sisterhood. If we nurtured their talent and insisted on deviant passion over peer pressure, we could move mountains. That is so powerful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
like
man.
that.
Yeah, that hit me like a ton of bricks. I love
Holy shit.
that. Yeah.
Alicia, so as you were reading that, I just connected to a song that like teenage me was like blasting all the time, and it was on like Shania Twain's like last album that she had released. It's a song called Juanita, and their lyrics are like, "She's the restless river running through my veins. She rides without the reins. Her name's Juanita. She lives in the heart of every woman in the world, within the reach of every girl who wants to meet her." Like the whole thing is a like a horse riding allegory for like freedom and like feminist freedom and rage and frustration with patriarchy and all of that, including, and this is a country song in the 2000s, let me remind everyone, when someone tries to take away the freedom of your choice, to take away your voice, that's when you need her. Like,
Ooh.
holy
Mm.
shit, forgot about all of
Thanks,
this. And
Shania.
then like thanks for
Yeah.
unlocking that for me again, Alicia. Thanks for that
Yeah.
quote. Like, wow.
Oh. Ugh, yeah. That's so powerful, and it speaks to of, like, like, sort of that reclaiming of power, and in so many ways that, like I guess, like, in ways that a lot of people, like, dismiss and sort of don't what's the word I'm trying to say? But it's like, it feels very subversive and very not quite, like, secret, but, like, inaccessible to folks who kind of don't look hard enough, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm thinking like the phrase of like the deviant passion over peer pressure where it's sort of like,
Oh, embracing your cringe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's it. That's it
Embracing your cringe.
exactly.
I love
That's
it.
it
Yeah.
exactly. Embracing that weirdness and that subversiveness is so powerful and so very queer. I think that that might be part of the nugget that I'm kind of like I couldn't quite ever place my finger quite on why I'm like, I know horse girls are like at least tangentially queer. Like it's kind of getting to that little nugget of weirdness, deliberate weirdness. Do we want to kind of get into some more of these like tropes? Like, Kate, what kind of tropes have you encountered in like the stuff that you read when you were younger? And I guess and the stuff that you read now.
Yeah, so I actually at the beginning of the pandemic, I had this really brief time where I actually read a bunch of horse books again. They
Awesome.
were
Yeah.
they were for grown-ups. Well, they were young adult because I could at least count on them to not have a bunch of, like, sex in them, and that made me more comfortable. So,
Good. Yeah.
yeah, and so I genuinely don't remember the plot, but I have a feeling it had something to do with, like, oh, it was this horse that either no one wanted or no one could deal with. And by some, like, sheer magic, like, this girl could deal with this horse, and it became, like, her best friend and all this other stuff. That's, like, a super common trope, and it's super like, it is super fun to make fun of that trope, but I also think there's something kind of touching about the idea that, like, it goes back to that power thing. They may not have power anywhere else, but with that horse, like, they have power that is not based on strength or on how big and scary they can make themselves. It's based solely on some kind of, I mean, in some cases, I guess, literally, like, almost otherworldly, magical, like magic-esque kind of connection that we all know isn't really real, but I would hazard a guess that everyone who has ever had a horse that was special to them, whether it was theirs or not, they were like, "I have a bond with this horse that clearly no one else does."
Nobody else has, of course.
Right, yeah, and like, "Oh, I could get that horse to do things no one else would," and I'm sure in a lot of cases that's actually true because horses, they learn who their people are and they learn to trust individuals, and, like, there's some credible research that horses will remember people who were good to them, like, a decade later,
Mm.
so they have good
Wow.
memories. Yeah, so it's one of my favorite tropes, but it's also, like, so genuine and heartfelt a lot of the time that, like, while I do enjoy making fun of it, it also, like, it's a trope that's close to my heart.
I adore it because
Yeah.
I'm kind of like I was never really a horse girl. I feel like I'm on the, like, sort of parallel track of, like, animal girl,
Yeah.
like, in general, like, dogs and cats, and
Oh, yeah.
for me, rabbits, where it was like, yeah, I will hype like, that's where I will focus, and it's
Yeah.
like, that trope is so heartening to me because it really speaks to, like, this mystical, magical power really is just, like, listening and friendship and, like, genuinely, like, emotionally connecting with another being, and it's like, I feel like that's so, like, genuinely, like, touching and sort of special, and it's sort of like that special relationship that only this girl and only this horse have is sort of like it's speaking to that experience of, like, seeing another being and seeing, like, their soul and, like, their, like, emotional being, like, they have like, they're a person, and they also see you as a person,
Yeah, well,
I think that that's just really lovely. I've always lived like that trope too,
yeah,
so
and I love that, like, horses are one-ton creatures. If a horse doesn't wanna do something, it's bloody well not gonna do it, like, even the little tiny miniature horses, like, they're gonna beat me in any battle
yeah.
of will or strength. The
Sure.
tiny geriatric horse at the stable is going to beat me. And this is evidenced by the fact that I often can't get him to move out of the way of my car so I can leave him alone, like, for love or money or cookies. But there's something that to, like, a one-ton animal choosing to do something you asked it to do, not because it's afraid of you, but because it sees something, like, that it's willing to do that for you, like, in the end, it's willing to run at a jump that, like, is scary and has boxes in front of it and is something that any horse in its right mind and any untrained horse would take a look at that and be like, "Oh, hell no." But, like, these horses have learned, we've taught them, hopefully through kindness, but we've taught them to, like, do impossible things, and war horses are even more, like, the really
Mhm.
extreme version of that.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a good horse girl book that's not about a girl.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
War horse takes my heart out and steps on
Oh,
it and then gives it back to me.
man.
It was made into a movie also, but if you ever have the chance to see the stage play,
Oh, it's incredible.
Oh,
I think
man,
I cried
yeah.
half the time.
the horses are portrayed
They're
by
amazing.
the most incredible puppets and puppeteers I have ever seen. When
Yeah.
I studied in London, I got a chance to tour backstage at, I think it was the
Oh.
National Theatre where it was, and see the puppets up close and everything. It's
I saw the
Very
London
cool.
production. It's incredible. And there's some really cool videos out there of the various productions meeting, like, mounted patrol
Oh, wow.
and, like, I think some of the I don't know, like, the tower horses or whatever.
Yeah,
And the horses
incredible.
actually, it's so cool to watch them respond to them. The horses, for, like, as far as I can tell, look completely fooled.
Oh, really?
They do not know that that's not a horse, and the people puppeting those horses are so good at their ears and their facial expressions that they're actually able to make the puppet respond the way a real horse would, and it's just so
Oh, yeah.
funny to watch those videos of, like, real horses interacting with the puppets and, like, clearly being thrown for a complete loop. 'Cause it smells like
It's
people and
really
leather and
cool.
things, but it
Yeah,
acts like a horse, and you can
but it
tell
acts
they're
like a
just kinda like,
horse.
"What the devil is going on here?"
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. And it's like it's doing things that it wouldn't do and it's scared of, and it's doing things because it likes you. It's sort of like there's, like, this really, like
Yeah.
it's a really, like, weird sort of almost selfish, but, like, really, like, empowering sort of, like, nugget there that I'm like, "This creature likes me," you
Yeah,
know? And it's like, this creature likes me over everybody else, and there's
yeah,
something really kind of like, "Oh, I feel really special," you know?
Even if you're just doing a trail ride for an hour, like, this one-ton animal would like to eat whatever is around, and I am telling him no, and he's like, "Well, fine."
yeah.
We're
Yeah,
going along with it because of the training and because of the amount of time and human hours and kindness and compassion that is built into horse training, at least if you're doing it
Good horse
the right
training,
way.
yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
always hope that the reason the horse is responding that way isn't because someone beat it last time it did something wrong. You always hope that
yeah,
it's like someone was kind to that horse when they taught it, and that's why it's so willing to do it.
yeah,
Like, that's not always a guarantee, but
yeah.
Not for nothing, though, there are a lot of horse girl books, both fantastical and that take place in, like, kind of the real world, where, like, a human character who's been hurt is going on a healing journey alongside a horse who has
mhm,
been hurt or mistreated or what have you,
Mm,
and it can be a really great way for the young people especially to be able to externalize and analyze the harms that have come to them and
mm,
be able to work through some of those things and think through some of those hard things.
yeah.
yeah.
What other kind of tropes can we visit? Like, there's, I'm thinking of, like, these horse girl movies where it's, like, either the girl or the horse, like, kinda save each other's lives and things like
Mm,
that.
mhm.
There's sort of
Yeah.
this, like, weird kind of survival element to it. Yeah, what other
Oh,
kind of
I mean, like,
tropes?
Hidalgo has that trope.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
If we wanna talk
Yeah.
about other things, like, that Viggo Mortensen has been in Lord of
Yep.
the Rings movies.
I was gonna say,
Uh,
we're slowly sliding into the Viggo Mortensen station. I can see it on the horizon.
yeah, yeah.
We're
Hidalgo is very much that. Like, he
mm,
saves that horse, and then the horse later on saves him, and
saves
they're
his
just
life.
like, I mean, they're just buddies. The number of times that, like, even in old westerns that, like, Silver or one of the old cowboy horses saves their person from, like, a mountain lion or a bear or something like that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
or saves a little
totally.
kid from such, you know?
I
Yeah.
think one thing that's interesting about that too is that, like, cowboy culture, like actual historical cowboy culture is very not white and very not straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's not necessarily the norm of the trope that we see now through, like, more modern westerns and things like that, but
Yeah,
historically, that is what the reality is, to the point where it's often very misogynistic, so, not great for
yeah,
girls or whatever, but the queerness of that sort of cowboy culture and how the like stepping aside from a normative society culture that expects you to engage in heterosexual matrimony and like procreation and instead stepping aside and having this strong bond with your horse and the open road, the trail, like all of that. Those are, I think, really key horse girl tropes for non-girls.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did y'all
Yeah.
know that there's actually, like, an international gay rodeo association?
Mhm.
Amazing.
It's totally a thing. I need to go to one
Amazing.
sometime because I think that would just be a great place to be.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Apparently, we have one here, like, there's actually a New Mexico chapter.
Oh,
I
wow.
just
Yeah.
think that would be super fun. But yeah, I thought that definitely merits mention here that there's like literally this is not something that just like a small number of people are seeing. There's like a whole literal international gay rodeo association. It's international even. It's not even just like national.
Amazing.
Not just national. Yeah.
I think I might end up having to make a playlist of all the songs that I'm gonna mention here. I did not even realize that this was a dimension of my horse girlness. The video in particular, like, the song is great, and then the video in particular for Orville Peck's Queen of the Rodeo that
Mm.
specifically looks at queer and trans people
Oh,
in
that's
the
cool.
rodeo community and everything is
Mm.
phenomenal, and that's a really cool modern piece, giving voice to the queerness inherent in like the subculture around horses and
Yeah.
horse girls.
Oh, I love that. Talking some more about sort of the horse girl genre, we've kind of mentioned that there's like these sort of fantastical horse girl books, but it kind of goes even beyond that into dragon books, dragon writing books, which we have kind of discovered as we've been talking that they're horse people too. Dragon riding people are horse people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more kind of about that sort of genre of book because that's something that's been around for ever and ever is books about dragons and the people who write them.
And like it's periodically just back in the zeitgeist again and it's having a
Yeah.
moment again now. So I
Yeah.
think it's really good to talk about it.
Which frankly is like a dream come true for me because I loved it I mean, I was in like mid school last time dragons were a thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a little while ago. And I was reading Anne McCaffrey as a sixth grader, which,
Mhm.
whatever. If you're
Yeah.
old enough to
Say.
ask, you're old enough to know, I guess. But I transitioned directly from horse books to dragon books, and I don't think that was accidental. I
Ah,
think Tiny
Same.
Kate saw people riding dragons and was like, "Oh, dragons are basically just fantasy horses, right?" And just
Yeah.
went wild.
Yeah.
that's it.
Well, and as we were sort of prepping for the podcast, we started sort of just fangirl squeeing over all of the different things we can think of. But we were talking about Naomi Novik's Temeraire series, where all of the grand battleships in the Napoleonic Wars are actually in this imagining dragons who have riders and like a bond or connection with that rider. And what were some of the others that we thought of?
Well, How to Train Your Dragon
Oh yeah.
and How to Train Your Dragon deserves a special shout out because the horse community got so obsessed with How to Train Your Dragon that there have been a number of different dressage freestyles. So, like, dressage is the pretty horse dancing that you see at the Olympics.
Hmm.
And there's like different events that you can do in dressage, but one of them is freestyle, which is basically a choreographed horse dance that incorporates certain required movements, kind of like a floor routine for gymnasts that's
Right.
freestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the best freestyles that I think I've seen was this incredible dressage rider. Her name's Charlotte Dujardin. She did on her horse. His barn name is Blueberry, but I don't remember what. Like I always forget this horse's fancy show name. But they did a freestyle to How to Train Your Dragon to music from that soundtrack.
That's really cute.
And I don't know a single horse person who hasn't watched it and like cried a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
so funny, like, how quickly the horse world really glommed onto that How to Train Your Dragon movie, to the extent that of, like, people joking around about how they're gonna go train their dragon when their horse is being, kind of out of control.
Uh,
How to Train Your Dragon is a movie that is a beautiful Venn diagram of near perfect overlap of cat people, dragon
Yes.
fantasy people, and horse
yes.
people.
And
Like it,
horse
it hits
people.
all of the right things.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That makes my heart so happy that there's
Well, and, like, it literally incorporates I've been keeping a list in my head of all the tropes we've looked at and also, like, how many of them are in How to Train Your Dragon, and I think actually all the tropes we've mentioned are in How to Train Your Dragon. They save each
exactly.
other.
Yeah.
Hiccup pretty notoriously, that's how he gets freedom and self-expression is through Toothless, and vice versa, and, like, I mean, all the they're all there. It hits all of them.
Oh, oh, I love it so much. Oh, yeah. That's so great. Well, we kind of mentioned Pern, which is like this
Yeah.
kind of like
Oh, yeah.
huge behemoth of fantasy. Y'all would probably know better than I would. What are some kind of like more recent ones that are kind of coming back and having a moment? The one that you showed us earlier, Grace.
Oh, yeah. I happened to be in the bookstore and it was after a release for a really popular TikTok book sequel kind of thing that features dragons. And it was the day after, and they were breaking down from a midnight release that they'd had. And there was a sign that was like, like this dragon riding book, but yay. And I just picked up the sign and walked over to the customer service desk and pointed at it and was like, hi, this advertising is for me. Where do I find this book? And the book that they
Point me in
brought
the
me to.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a great conversation with the bookseller for like 10 minutes and it was beautiful and lovely.
Aw.
And the book that he brought me to was Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb, and I'm only about 60 some odd pages into it, but it's a very cool, like, dragon portals into a different world and ends up in sort of a humanoid form and then is going to have this connection with a human person, and I'm not exactly sure whether, like, a romance develops or not, but there's definitely some really cool, like, thinking about gender and bodies and body dysmorphia and things like that
Mm,
already even before the 2 point of view characters meet. So there's
mm.
definitely some very cool queer things going on there. One of the things that's back is the Aragon series has a new book.
Oh,
So if we remember that from,
That's
like,
oh
right.
10 years ago or
Yeah,
whatever.
from 3,000,000 years ago when I was born, basically. Like, tell me a little bit more because I think I only vaguely heard about this.
So, I just know my mom picked it up because she really, really, really loves those, and so it was like, "Oh, that okay, we're back." Like, this series that I thought was finished is back with another book, and that's another one where you have sort of the ability to communicate between the dragon rider and the dragon, right?
Right.
Joust was like that too, which I think is that Mercedes Lackey?
Oh, yeah.
We have to talk about Mercedes Lackey in the world of Horse Girls
Yeah, we do, the
because
Oh,
Valdemar.
yeah.
Valdemar, all the Valdemar series,
Yeah,
there are horses who are heralds. They're much more than horses,
yeah.
and they have companions, and they bond with humans. They have this amazing psychic connection then and everything. And that's sort of the fantasy version of the connection with your
Yeah.
horse,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
that's a big trope. Yeah.
They're a lot like Bernese dragons, but they're horse bodies
Yeah.
in some ways. The
Yeah.
way as I recall well, I don't know, I remember the telepathy thing reminded me a
Yep.
little bit of it, but it has been ages since I read one of those.
Mm.
There's a lot of very cool, like, female-centered main characters who get to have agency and everything. I grew up more on Mercedes Lackey than I did on Tamara Pierce, so, like, horses are also pretty important for Alana in all of
That's true.
her
Right.
arc too, but
Right.
the Mercedes Lackey one that I really, really, really remember is the first book that I read as a young teenager that had a queer point of view character was Vaniel in the Last Herald Mage trilogy
Mm.
by Mercedes Lackey, and he's one of the heralds and has this companion and what have you. So that horse girl trope, but the first time I saw it mapped onto someone who wasn't a cis woman, but who was queer and othered from society
Mhm.
in other structural ways and that same resonance. So I
Mm.
remember that one being huge for me
Mhm.
growing up.
I know I read that series, but I must not I'm notorious for, like, having not noticed when people are queer in books when I was a child. Like,
Mm, mm.
it didn't someone had to tell me years later, they were like, "Hey, you remember that Tamara Pierce series? Clark and Rosethorn are gay." I was like, "Oh, shit?" It was really funny. I was super excited. I was like,
Yeah.
"Are you kidding me? I never knew that." They're like,
Uh,
"Did you and I read the
amazing.
same book?
Amazing.
It's totally obvious."
The Last Herald Mage series is actually potentially being adapted into a television show.
Oh.
Oh, sweet.
But if you are like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna go pick that up, revisit my childhood or whatever, see what the kids were reading," like, so many trigger warnings in the first book alone for, like, a lot of unaliving sorts of things and tragedy and travesty, and I reread it this year and was like, "Oh, dang. Wow. I was 12 when I read this? Okay, okay."
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't the
Oof.
only one who was reading books that were probably technically a little too old for her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It had a horse on the cover, and so I was like, "Of course."
Of
Yeah.
Green
course.
Rider?
Yeah.
Are you about to mention Green Rider? That was a book that I do not remember any of,
I know I can't remember exactly
but
which
called
ones, but
Horse.
Robin Hobb has a number of series actually that go on that same sort of, like, connection with
Mm,
your
Creature.
vehicle or vessel
Yeah.
or, like, rider kind of trope. It's a stretch, but it's like Live Ship Traders, and then I think there's also Green Wild Chronicles or something that's dragons. We definitely have to mention Samantha Shannon, Priory of the Orange Tree, and I'm forgetting what the prequel is, but that is
Mhm.
that is sapphic and modern and lovely and also dragons.
I didn't know there were dragons in it. People have told me to read it, and I'm always like, "No, that's okay." No one ever thought to tell me there were dragons in it.
There's at least, like,
Wild.
dragon eggs and, like, one of the dragons or what have you is more of, like, a water type,
Oh,
and
cool.
so it's sort of counter to some of the fire-breathing
Yeah, like the
sort of norms of that genre.
well, I'm thinking of, like, in a lot of East Asian cultures, dragons are associated with water far more than
Exactly, and
with fire
that's
too.
what that is mapped onto there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some not entirely Western-centric views of
Mhm.
dragons and then but still having that sort of, like, horse girl connection sort of trope.
That was
Yeah.
a cool
Totally.
thing that they did in the Temeraire books, is Temeraire is, like, loosely based on a Chinese dragon
Mhm.
Yes.
and very associated with, like, water and stuff, and there are definitely, like, very English Welsh flag dragons also kicking
Yes.
around, but
Yeah, I do feel like we're remiss if we don't at least give a shout out to Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones.
Game of
yeah,
Thrones,
I just
yep.
never read those, so I never read the books or saw the show, so
So, I mean, spoilers for an old ass show and slash book series. She awakens these dragon eggs through magic, and her sacrifice of her son and husband and her special blood. And then she has an incredibly close relationship, specifically with the dragon Drogon, which is the largest one. She hatches three.
Yeah, she literally calls them her
Yes.
children, you know?
She rides them.
Yeah.
I knew the mother of dragons. I remember that was a
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a loose tracking onto the horse girl trope, but I feel like it is still there. I wish that I had something intelligent to say about House of the Dragon, but I have not read the source book for that, and I am only through episode 2 of the series, so I don't know enough to actually talk about it. But the whole thing
Yeah.
about Targaryens is that they're dragon riders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
They have an intimate connection with dragons.
This
Exactly.
reminded me I don't know if they fall into the horse girl, well, the kid definitely does. Dragon Prince.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, actually, we could also have the separate discussion of their previous media that involved dragons, at least 2 of them. But Dragon Prince, like, I feel like some of that actually in that too,
Mm,
some of the tropes, although the dragons in that are, like, very different because they have human intelligence and they're super long-lived and all that other stuff.
mm.
But, yeah, I think that's another bit of media that's come out recently that's had dragons in it and has some really good queer representation.
Yeah, I love The Dragon Prince. I think it's
Love that show. I haven't watched the most recent season yet.
yeah,
I need
get to it.
yeah,
I love it. I think it's a very worthy successor to Avatar: The Last Airbender
yeah.
in a very different way, a very
Oh,
refreshingly
yeah, it's
different way.
very different, but, like, some of it you're like, "I can see how the same people made both
I
of
was
them."
gonna say it's the same texture, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, boomerang jokes notwithstanding, and there's at
Yeah,
least one
boomerang notwithstanding,
has
and some voice actors
right,
crossing over
crossing over.
notwithstanding.
Yeah,
But it's the same they use the same storytelling, I think,
yeah.
techniques, and yeah, I think that could definitely fall into the whole dragon thing. So we've kind of been heading towards this. I think it was time we start looking at some of these sort of fantastical horse girl dragon rider tropes and look at how they kind of appear in Lord of the Rings. Specifically, we're very kind of deliberately looking at Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn.
Yeah.
We're not really looking so much at book Aragorn. I do think that we can talk about horse girls in the books, but I don't think that Aragorn in the books is a horse
Yeah,
girl,
so
right?
just a bit of a peek into how this episode came to be. There is this fantastic article on Polygon called Aragorn is absolutely a horse girl, subtitle for only in the movies.
Yeah. We talked about this quite a bit, and we were like, yes, we are in perfect agreement because it's centered around Viggo Mortensen, who is another certified horse girl.
Oh yeah, he definitely
And it is manifested in several movies, not just
yeah,
Lord of the Rings.
exactly.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about that article and kind of what some things got brought up in the article?
Yeah, the things that I personally think are really interesting in that article is one, I would just want to bring it up front. The Lord of the Rings movies would not exist without a legion of New Zealand horse girls because
Yeah,
they
Yes.
were the army.
oh yeah.
Yes. They were literally the cavalry of Rohan, you
Yeah,
know?
the horse
Yeah.
girls and their like random farm mounts that they usually use to pull carriages, and they threw a saddle on them and charged the horses. And
Oh
in
my
at
god.
least one or two scenes, if you watch real close, you can see horses who are like, "I am extremely uncomfortable right
You're like, I'm not doing
now."
this.
Why are we running?
Why?
There's one in one scene, and I catch it periodically when I watch the movies, that just seems to be running off like it's going almost nearly sideways.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
horse was just like, "Nope, pal, I am out.
I'm
I
out.
love
I'm
you,
out.
but this is not where it's at."
Yeah, that's a huge one. And famously, they got a lot of beards and wigs on these horse girls so that they would look
Amazing.
like
Yeah.
male riders of Rohan, which I think is just amazing. But you can see the skill of those riders in a lot of
Yeah.
those shots. It's
Yeah.
absolutely stunning and truly inspirational. I'm kind of like I feel like there were a lot of horse girls of New Zealand kind of had dreams come true for
Oh my god, are you like, yeah. I would give so much money to be involved in something like that. Like, that would be
God.
so cool. I would
Yeah.
also be terrified. It would be one of those where I'm like, "Oh dear god, I am about to die. Just hold on to the horse and pray that it goes
Oh,
in a straight line and
yeah.
doesn't trip."
It's sort of this like behind every fictional true king of men are several hundred horse girls making
Yeah.
sure that the movie
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell
One of
yeah.
the other things that touches on is how you would think Eowyn would be a horse girl since she is literally a horse girl being
Yeah.
Mhm.
Rohirric, but like
Mhm.
you don't even know the horse's name. We very specifically were discussing this about whether we considered Eowyn a horse girl or not, and none of us could remember her horse's name. Her horse just
Yeah.
abandons her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is kind of the same for all of the Rohirrim. Like none of them have like the only one who has a horse that you remember its name is Theoden, and shit don't go very well for him and his horse.
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
his unfortunately, his horse is, like they name it, like, in his epitaph,
Yeah,
right? Where they're like, he's directly
Yeah.
responsible
yeah.
for his master's death.
Master's Bane, Art Sweet
Yeah.
Snowmane.
You're like, "Sweet Snow Maid." You're like, "Oh my
It's
god." Like,
yeah.
what a way to remember your horse,
I
man. Come on.
I did look up the names of the horses in Lord of the Rings and in the Silmarillion, because of course I did. And
Of
I was
course.
really tickled at the names of all the Rohirrim horses, because they're very much what like a 5-year-old kid would name their pony, like Snowmane and Firefoot, and just like
Yeah.
it's either that or their warrior cat names. So,
Yeah,
it's
like
they're
Windfulla,
yeah.
Windfulla.
who is the one that Eowyn rides into battle, right? Or did I just make that up because no one remembers? I didn't. It's
It
the
is
thing,
Windfulla.
but
Yeah, that's that one's name. And I looked it up, and it just means windfall,
yep.
Yeah.
as I recall.
That
Yeah.
is kind of how most of all of the linguistics for Rohan work,
Yeah,
though. Like
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it, it is kind of like Kingman, man,
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
dude, man.
Dude, man.
Or there's probably a horse named Horse Horse. The equivalent of Pine Pine the wolf. It just like periodically gets stuck in
Moon
the
Moon.
fence.
Yeah.
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 Who is
Moon.
the Rohanian dude who's named the equivalent of dude bro, and what is that?
Yeah. What is that? I need to
Someone get in the
know.
Love
comments and tell me.
this. Someone out there knows.
Please submit. Speaking of horse names, like Aragorn's horse in the book, Rohirrim.
Aragorn gets a horse from Eomer, as you know, weregild for their friends who are dead who aren't actually dead. And he gives that horse back up when the Grey Company comes down from the north in the books, and it's his like trusty steed. It's Rohirrim is what his name is. I don't remember what the horse's actual name was.
Aragorn's actual horse is Rohirrim, and Éomer gives
Hasafel.
Housefell and
Yeah.
Arod, I believe.
Hasufel and Arod
Hasafel.
to the three hunters.
Which he
Yeah.
still does in the movie. He gives them Hasafel and
Right.
Arod. But yeah. So
Right.
Rohirrim comes down, and Aragorn has this whole horse girl moment with this horse that he already has a relationship with, going into the paths of the dead. Because in the book, they
Right.
actually lead all the horses through the paths of the dead, and the only way they can do that is through the great love between the riders and the horses, because it's only the Grey Company whose horses will go through. The Rohirric horse
Exactly.
that Legolas and Gimli are riding runs away.
Yeah, they can't handle it. And it's a sign.
Yeah.
It's a sign of Aragorn's like great love and will, basically, that his horse will follow him underground, basically.
And that's it.
Like that's it for
Yeah,
the book.
that's it.
That's it for the book.
That's all you get.
Which is so different from the movie.
Right.
Yeah, where we have Aragorn and Embrego, who in the extended edition gets a lot longer introduction, and we get to see Aragorn work his raised by elves magic on this wild horse
Yeah.
that no one else can tame.
Can I just read one line from this article? Reader, I am begging you to examine the way Viggo Mortensen plays Aragorn like he is one hard cut away from making out with his horse at any given time.
Yes. It's so good.
Oh my god.
Oh,
It hits every trope.
Mortensen really liked that horse.
it hits every trope. He's like, no one else can ride him. Aragorn's like, we need to set him free. You know, he's seen enough of war. And then later, when poor Aragorn has been left for dead,
Yeah.
you know, floating in a river,
Comes back for him.
who comes
There
back
you go.
but Brego
Yeah.
To kiss him tenderly on his
to
nose.
kiss him tenderly to life.
Been fantasizing or having a psychic connection with Arwen.
Right.
Right?
And
Right.
We talked earlier about this like weirdly sexualized thing that people do about horse girls, and then we have this discussion where we're like, okay, but actually.
Oh god, maybe Arwen is literally a horse girl.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Galaxy brain.
So in the movie it's Herb, and in the book it's Elrond, who does call forth like the horses made of water.
Yes,
to
I love
sweep
that
away
scene.
the
So cool.
steeds of the ring wraiths and of the Nazgul. So, you know, there's definitely some horse girl vibes going through that family line. Yeah.
Not to bring up traumatizing memories of Rings of Power, but there's a long as I say, there's a
Really weird. Like, I did not even watch Rings of Power, but I watched that one scene when y'all sent it to me, and I was just like, yeah, okay, this is definitely like, it's making me uncomfortable.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Excuse the pun, but sometimes we horse girls need to be reined in just a little bit. And like maybe we're not allowed to have more than like 6 seconds of slow motion horseback
It's
riding.
20 full seconds.
Like,
It's too much.
why?
It's too much.
Why is there so much?
I literally have this in our notes as, I guess we've got to fucking talk about that Galadriel scene.
Like, I get it. Rings of Power, Galadriel can be a horse girl. I'm so here for it. Just could we have trimmed at least like 13 seconds out of that scene? It would have been great.
Could we have a few less seconds of Galadriel being a horse girl?
Yeah. Like we got it. We got it again. And then we got it an uncomfortable number of times in that scene to the point where we don't need to get it anymore. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Not necessary.
Well, I was gonna say that like Aragorn comes by his horse girlness. It's in the long line of Elendil. They're all horse girls too. So he
That's
comes by
true.
it by genetics. You know,
I feel like we need to
it's
talk
in his
about like
blood.
horses in Numenor too in a second after we get
Yeah.
through like the Lord of the Rings stuff. But can we talk for a minute about how Viggo Mortensen, real life horse girl,
Yes.
actually like went beyond the like I bonded with these horses on set to the point that he bought two of the horses and brought them
Oh.
home with him?
Didn't he? And he
Oh.
also, I don't know if it was one of the two, but also bought one for one of the stunt riders.
Mhm.
Jane Abbott. Yep, she was one of the
Yes.
stunt riders for Arwen, and she was also a horse trainer on the production.
Yeah.
And he bought, I think that
Asfaloth.
horse's name was Florian?
Florian is the
Yeah.
horse's real name, yeah, but it's the horse that played Ascalon.
And 'cause he's an Andalusian and just beautiful, beautiful
Oh,
horse.
so
It's always
pretty.
an Andalusian or if you need a white horse, it's an Andalusian. If you need a
Mhm.
black horse, it's a Frisian. Everything else
Mm.
is chopped liver. I think Brago's just a plain red horse, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
I love this for Vigo too, yeah.
Right, because my horse is a plain little red horse. And I'm just
Oh.
like, so I have this fellow feeling for people who like the plain little red horses.
Mhm.
Aw, yeah. He bought Florian and gave him to Jane, basically, which is
Yeah.
freaking amazing. Like,
Truly amazing because the piece to consider in that too is like once these horses have been trained as stunt
That's a
horses
trained stunt
for
horse.
yeah,
yeah.
That thing is
like
worth a lot of freaking money.
Yep.
yeah. What was there was something that I was reading about like as we're talking about war horses and
Yeah,
fiction and everything, like the sort of equivalent cost or value in our like monetary understanding would be like $150,000 to $250,000 of like horse and training and
yeah,
whatever. So it's a huge deal when characters have that bond and connection with the horse, and we tend not to
yeah.
think of the economics of a fictional world of like who even gets to have a horse or like finds a horse wandering in the woods and bonds with them or what have you. But they're very expensive to train, and so the part of the thing for Jane Abbott was that she was never gonna be able to afford to buy
Oh,
this
yeah,
horse that
no.
she fell in love with,
Mm,
and Viggo Mortensen was like, "I got you."
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
Amazing.
and as I recall, he also bought at least one of the horses that played Hidalgo.
I think
really?
he might have.
I think so. I'm pretty damn sure he bought at least one of the horses that played Hidalgo. I think there were like 4 or 5 of them, which is funny because it's a paint horse, so you can actually tell the difference
Yeah.
between the different horses if you watch it enough that you can pick out the paint spots. But yeah, I think he bought at least one of the horses from Hidalgo
He
too.
did.
Wow.
So, he bought one of the horses, RH Tech Contender, which is one of the paints used in the film, and then the screenwriter, John Fusco, bought Oscar, who was the main stunt horse,
Cool.
and then another one of the horses went to a ranch in Colorado.
I want to meet
So
that horse.
also, the film grossed $18 million on opening weekend, peaking at number 3. This is behind Passion of the Christ and Starsky and Hutch, and I do want to make sure that we all know that it was because of Horse Girls
Yeah.
and Lord of the Rings girlies
Oh,
who
it's
wanted to
straight
see
up.
Viggo Mortensen with a
I
horse again.
Yeah, I went because it was a horse movie.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
yeah.
It's so fun. And like so much of the humor is very like it's very horse humor and you're just like no one would think to make these jokes except someone who actually lives with horses and is like, giving their horse grief. Um
Uh,
yeah, it's a good one.
Should we talk about some of the other horse girls in Lord of the Rings?
yes. Yes. Let's do that.
So the article that Alicia referenced does also talk about Shadowfax and how Shadowfax's treatment in the book is like not horse girl level. Like Shadowfax is this like untamable sort of like magical horse who can understand the speech of men and everything. So like all of the factors should be there, but really like the whole description of Gandalf talking about his time with Shadowfax is not very horse girl aesthetic here. It's just never before had any man mounted him, but I took him and I tamed him. That's just not the vibe. It's not the
No,
vibe.
It's
not
So
the
just kind of like,
vibe.
Shadowfax is
oh.
done dirty by the narrative.
Not the vibe.
So, like,
Poor
I would
Shadowfax.
guess, like,
Yeah.
technically, Gandalf is a horse girl. He's just not really treated as such in the primary text. You get a little bit more of
Mm.
that in the movie,
Yeah.
but not a lot more of that. And I think it's just because Viggo
No.
was just chewing up the scenery with Brago, right?
Yeah, Vigo and Brago over here making
Right.
out and just,
Yeah.
like, distracting everybody
He goes
else.
over here
So,
literally kissing his
yeah.
horse, and everyone else
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
I definitely think, like, it's there, and I can imagine, like, fan works and everything really exploring it, but the primary text just sort of drops the ball on any sort of connection there, not even just through our horse girl lens, but through any sort of narrative connection and strengthening of it.
I think we need to talk about Sam and Bill.
Yes.
Mhm.
I feel like this is, like, one of the most, like, tender and, like, wonderful kind of, like, bits of in the books that I think gets kind of the short shrift in the movies, again, probably because they gave a lot of that energy to Vigo,
Well,
or Vigo took that energy.
so I think with Sam and Bill, one of the reasons why it was left out of the movie so much is because Bill was, for the most part, two people in a pony outfit. Because they had
Right?
to take this pony to terrain they couldn't safely take a pony to. And I would
Yeah.
just imagine it's probably hard to build some sort of, like, realistic seeming relationship with two dudes in a pony suit.
They should have gotten the people from Warhorse.
Exactly. I was thinking that too.
They need good
They
puppeteers.
need highly realistic puppets that require
Yeah,
3 people to
exactly,
do. Yeah.
Like, all I
exactly.
can think of is that wide shot in the Midgewater Marshes where you can totally see it's two people in a horse suit.
Oh, no. I've never even paid that close of attention, and I didn't actually know it was 2 people in a horse
Oh,
suit.
well, you're
Oh,
welcome the next time you
Now I
watch this
know
movie.
that it can never be unseen.
I think the only time it's an actual horse is right outside of the gates of Moria, but I'm not 100% sure
Right,
on
when he
that.
actually literally says bye to the horse.
Right, exactly, and then
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
aw,
slap its bum and he trots away, yeah.
Yeah.
aw.
But, like, in the books, you get a lot more of Bill the pony and other ponies that the hobbits interact with and, like,
Mhm.
through Bree, and it's just a much bigger part of the culture
Yeah.
around Bree and everything.
It's just, like, one of those really special moments, I think, between Bill and Sam is, Sam sort of he went all the way to Rivendell, basically, with him, and he was really distraught at leaving him behind in Moria, and really that moment when they have just gone through this, like, horrible experience with the Watcher in the water, the doors have crumbled, they're trapped in Moria. He's like, "Oh god, poor old Bill." He's so worried that poor Bill has been taken by the Watcher and is gonna get eaten by wolves, and, it's just sort of like, "Oh, bless your heart," like, worrying about your precious pony friend when all of this, like, horrible shit has just has just happened to you and all of your other
And it is
friends.
cruel that Tolkien does not tell you what happens to Bill for
Oh,
hundreds
Yeah,
of
it's
a long
pages.
time.
it's highly
Oh,
mean.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
But then when that moment does happen, you're just,
Yeah.
like, so
You're just like,
Right.
delighted.
"It's Bill the
"Oh my
pony!"
god, it's Bill.
Yes.
He's okay. He made it back to Rivendell, man. He's been having his best pony life."
Sam rides Bill the pony to the Grey Havens when he accompanies Frodo to see him off. Like,
Oh, no!
Oh. Oh,
My heart.
like
my
my
heart.
heart. Bill the pony and Sam, like, oh my
They
gosh.
bond.
Oh, yeah.
They're bros.
Also, it was Bill the pony who kicked Bill Fernie as he ran off into the night as
Hell
they, like,
yeah.
get
Good
back
job,
to,
Bill.
Hell
like,
yeah.
good job, Bill. Just all around. And, like, what a name for a horse.
It's such
Yeah.
a good name.
Bill.
I just realized I have never known a single pony named Bill. Like, I've known Flickas, I've known,
Mhm.
there's a bazillion Misties.
Yeah.
But I've
Oh,
never known
sure, sure.
I've never
Sure,
known a
sure.
pony named Bill.
Ugh, we gotta
Get
we
on
gotta
that.
find some.
Gotta get on
Yeah.
that.
Speaking of other ponies, Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil might be a horse
I
girl
think Tom Bombadil is.
because, for one thing, all of the ponies in the Barrow Downs, they get spooked and run away. Who do they go and find? Well, they go
Bill.
and find good old Fatty Lumpkin, who is
Daddy
Yeah.
Lumpkin.
Oh god, I love Patty Lumpkin.
who
What a
is
name.
Tom's wonderful pony. because they're like, he knows what's up. We'll be safe
But
with
also,
him.
like, Fatty Lumpkin, like, Tom doesn't ride Fatty Lumpkin a lot. He mostly hangs out with Fatty Lumpkin. So, like,
They're bros.
He's a pasture pet.
Yeah,
He's a
they're
pasture
bros.
ornament. Yeah.
Yeah, and when Fatty Lumpkin basically brings them to Tom, he gives them new names, which I think the quote is they answer to, for the rest of their lives,
That's
basically.
so cute. Oh my god.
Ugh,
It's like he could
like,
see
they're
their
like
the
inner
name
characters and name them the right thing.
exactly.
He knew
Ugh.
their true names.
Exactly.
because they're,
Oh,
like, Sharp
exactly.
Ears, Wise Nose, Twishtail, White Fox, and
Oh,
Pumpkin.
And what?
oh,
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin. Amazing.
pumpkin.
I love it.
I love how there's Fatty Lumpkin who names Pumpkin. Who
Yeah.
I love the name Wise Nose. I think
Wise
it's
Nose.
just like,
That's such
oh,
a good name.
so
I actually
cute.
love all of those names.
Yeah, and like they're all great, perfect pony names, perfect
Yeah.
names.
So I don't know. Ponies are the devil.
Wow, hot
I was gonna
takes.
say, is this
These
hot
ponies.
take?
These ponies are far
Is
too.
this where we get into horse girls versus pony girls?
Ooh.
No, it's just
Oh,
it's this really funny, like, I don't know, known thing that the smaller the horse, the like more you have to watch out for it because it's probably plotting your demise.
Mm.
So
it's
like
just like dogs.
yeah, so
It's
like
just
there's
like
the running
dogs.
joke that like ponies are just evil. They just are.
Mm.
So like I feel these ponies are all very well behaved for literal actual ponies. There's like some weird thing in the horse world, and this is international because Icelandic horses are oh god, I hope no one from Iceland is listening to this. Icelandic horses are short, and so by like the rules of just height of horses, anything under 14.1, I think, hands is a pony. But if you call an Icelandic horse a pony, like on your head be it. You do not
Ooh,
call an Icelandic horse a pony.
a pony.
You just
Wow, I didn't
absolutely
know
don't.
that.
And like it got me in a little bit of trouble because I call all horses ponies. It's like the diminutive of calling all dogs puppies.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you call cats
Right,
kitties.
yeah.
They're
And
all
I said,
kittens.
"Oh, what a cute pony." And someone's like, "That's not a pony." I was like,
Oh God.
"Okay,
Wow.
I'm not going to explain this. It's fine." And the Arabian horse people get the same way. So there are like literally
Mm.
some breeds of horse
Oh.
that no matter what size they are horses. It's like this weird thing that the horse world has against ponies.
Wild.
Yeah.
Well, and, like, you
Wild.
mentioned Misty, which is from the book Misty of Chincoteague,
Yes.
and Margaret Henry did a
Yeah.
ton of horse girl books, right? But you actually can go camp on Azteek Island and, like, camp next to the ponies and
Yeah.
everything.
And they're
Um,
hooligans.
they're amazing assholes who will
They're
just stick
jerks.
their
Oh my
heads
God. I
They
love it.
right into your tent or camper or whatever. You had best not leave out marshmallows or Doritos.
There are so many funny videos of them just like straight up a gang of horses
Oh,
going
yeah.
through people's picnics, just laying waste to everything, trampling
Oh
the
my God.
sandwiches, playing with the blankets,
Oh
eating,
my
I don't
God.
know.
I have watched them, like, take a cooler because they know what coolers are and they know
Oh,
what's in
hell
them,
yeah.
and just unpack it and, like, unpack grocery bags, like, throwing one thing out at a time with their teeth until they get to the marshmallows at the bottom, and then
Yeah.
they take the
They're such
marshmallows,
assholes.
throw them down on the floor, put a hoof on it, and rip
Rip it
them so
open.
that the
Yeah.
marshmallows go flying, and, like,
Oh my
you're not gonna
God.
tell a one-ton animal
No.
what to do or move or whatever, and the park rangers will come up and be like, "Well, yeah, we told you. This is why we told you.
Right.
We'll
Oh
keep
my
them from
God.
kicking your car. We have a big water spray bottle, but they're not gonna leave the
Right. They're like
marshmallows. Like,
giant
just don't
cats.
go
We
near
just
them right
spray them with
now."
the bottle if they get too out of hand. And
Yeah.
you can actually, you too can own a an acetate pony. They still do the pony pinning and the swim every
Wow.
year, and they
They
adopt out
do.
these
The
horses.
barrier island is split between 2 different states, Maryland and
Yeah,
Virginia, and one uses I believe hormone darts to control the pony population,
Virginia,
and the other
I
does,
think.
the Virginia side does the pony penning and swim
I thought
across.
it was no, Maryland does the pony pinning.
Maryland does the pony penning
It's a very
and
big cultural thing.
or no, Virginia does the pony penning
Really?
because Chincoteague, the island, is on the Virginia side. over the
Okay.
Virginia border.
Wow.
Maryland is where you have the better state parks and national parks to be able to camp on the island, though.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
We usually go every year. Just about.
I was not aware that
Oh.
more than one barrier island had a rogue herd of
Rogue,
horses.
There's
rogue
North
pony
Carolina too.
population.
So I grew up in Georgia, and we had Cumberland Island, which has like
Right.
a Mustang herd, which
Mhm.
are also all assholes.
Yeah. I mean, Mustangs out in the wet, like, we will not get me started on Mustangs because we'll be here for the next, like, 2 hours.
That's our next episode with you,
Yeah, that's our
perhaps.
next episode is just me carrying on at length about Mustangs and
Sure.
desert ecology and the fact that they're literally tearing the West to shreds.
Mm.
But they're assholes too. I mean, I think, like, just across the board, Mustangs are kind of jerks. I love them. Actually, one of the first horses that I rode, like, a lot was a Mustang, and I loved her to death. So I love Mustangs, and the horse that I learned to jump on was this incredible little Mustang. He was called Surprise Pony. He looked like a miniature
Oh.
Frisian. He was very much a pony, and God, I loved that horse so much. Like, God rest his soul. He taught so many people how to jump. So they can be wonderful horses, but yeah, they also known for being a little bit persnickety.
I also tend to love horses that are a little bit of an asshole.
A bit of an
So,
asshole,
you know,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Ones with
little spruce and
personality.
personality. Yeah.
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 The thing I was going to say with the Assateague ponies or horses, though, is that because of the conditions that on the island, if they live on the island, they tend not to grow to a full size horse size, so they're called ponies. But the ones that are penned and small
Oh.
across to the mainland do typically grow to like horse
Oh, they
size.
do.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's a really interesting. Like they are
That is interesting.
horses, but on the island they
They're
qualify as
they're technically
ponies.
ponies.
It's
Wow.
very very
That's
cool and
interesting. Yeah. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, sorry for that diversion from
Oh, no.
ponies are
It's a
evil.
great that's
Everything's not
ponies are
evil with
evil. No,
ponies.
that's the kind of diversions I love. Yeah,
you also talked about like
completely.
how ponies, like we use it as like the diminutive, and this is going to bring me back to Tolkien and etymology because I forget where it is, but he notes that kin in terms of like fatty lumpkin and bumpkin is used as a diminutive suffix. So
I love
it's
this.
just like little fatty lump.
Little fatty lump.
It's the
Oh my
equivalent of
he's a little
it's
bump. He's just a little bump. Oh my
yeah. Oh
goodness.
my gosh,
Oh
I love that.
Oh no.
my goodness. I love it.
The pony's named after a lipoma.
No. Oh, oh
Ooh.
my goodness. Now I'm just like, yeah, now I'm just imagining Fatty Lumpkin as just kind of looking like some of my like really older like senior dogs that just have lots of lumps all over them. And I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
buddy.
bless you. Oh, precious babies.
Um, I don't know why this is to me, but I have a kind of mental link now between Tom Bombadil and Beorn, and I think it might have to do
Mm.
with this episode and like knowing how they treat their ponies. But just
Oh,
like Tom Bombadil, Beorn is serious about his ponies.
totally.
Like, he does not want to lend them out. He will only lend them out. They have to set them free, and he follows them the entire time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Like, I guess you could call it stewardship, but I feel like that deep relationship between a carer and the caree, the creature that is being cared for, I feel like that's a super strong link between Tom Bombadil and Beorn. And Beorn as like, this huge, terrifying sort of creature is taking care of all of these really like gentle like prey animals, right? And a bear is a peak predator. It's really like this. I just like I love that sort of like that gentleness that is sort of that is part of his relationship with his herd.
Two other ponies that I think we should mention that just they're mentioned in the narrative. Mary is given a pony by Theoden. The
Mm,
pony's name
hmm.
is Stibba, I think.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get to ride the pony all the way through to battle because the whole thing is that like Eowyn picks him up as Durnhelm or whatever, and rides with him. So like the pony stays behind. And then I always forget this, and every time I look it back up, I laugh because I think it's hilarious. Frodo gets a pony, and he names it Strider.
Amazing.
After Aragorn. So
What a
Frodo rides the
troll. I
pony
love
named
it.
Strider
I
to the
love
ship to
it.
go to the Grey Havens while
Oh,
like Sam is alongside him on Bill the Pony.
oh,
And this
what
is
a
hilarious.
troll move.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, ponies.
Also, I want to talk a little bit about Legolas and Gimli.
Oh,
And I
yes.
think we have a couple different like things to talk about here, but the one I wanted to touch on is that in so many books and movies or whatever, like the romantic trope is that, the one character sweeps the other up onto usually his horse and they ride together, and there's like the intimacy of like two beings trying to ride the same animal, and the touching and the proximity and the intimacy and all of that. And I just love that this is how Legolas and Gimli just go through the entire book. Like,
I love it so much.
so I
Yes.
just love the like romance novel trope there. Like, sure, it's practical, and it's like there was only one bed trope, but there was only one horse.
There was only one horse.
There was only one horse,
Oh!
and we're in the kingdom of people who ride horses, and there
Okay,
was only one
but
horse.
then this kind of fits with like the other thing, which was that really funny Tumblr post that went around about how
Oh yeah,
about Legolas not using tack and like why. So like, do none of the elves use tack except who's the one who they said like hasn't
Glorfindel.
Glorfindel.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like do none of the elves use tack except Glorfindel because he essentially has Satan as a horse? Or do all of the elves use tack like normal people, but Legolas
Yeah.
is over here being like, horse girl, I have a magical bond with my horse. Look at this. I taught it to ride at liberty, which is like
Yeah.
a thing. Like you can
Watch
teach it
me, Gimli. I can ride a horse without anything. Watch me, Gimli.
yeah. And then he's like got Gimli with him this whole time just so that he can show off even better. Love it.
And poor Gimli's like, my ass is, I cannot walk for like days
Right. Gimli's
because
like,
there's no
are you
saddle.
sure you can steer this thing without reins? Like, what's going on?
Oh man, Leah, I'm pretty sure Gimli was like that in regards to Legolas, regardless.
Oh,
I mean, yeah.
hey-oh,
I was thinking
hey-oh.
exercising some of the same muscles there.
Exercising
It's
some of the
just a
same. Oh, yeah.
training regimen,
Ride bareback. Yeah.
It's coming back to sexualizing horse already.
But no, I was going to say, like, at the place where you go to do like the adult horsey weekend, which sounds much worse now in the context of what we were just saying. So I think that's
Right?
Oh my
but
God.
there is one of the stable managers, her horse Molly is trained that she can be ridden bareback. So we do actually get like bareback riding lessons, and you get to like spend like 10 minutes like riding on Molly or whatever. Like only the super dedicated horse girls will actually show up for that, but where it's like, 6 of us there every time going like, yes, please, this would be
Yeah.
amazing.
I used to, for a brief period of time before I think it was before the first ankle surgery. Rocket can't jump now because he's older and he's got a foot thing that makes it so he can't jump. But I used to jump him bareback.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is wild. Like I
Wow.
I literally have video of me doing this, and I'm just like, how did I do that? Because like, I mean, well, my back hurt all the time is how I did it. I've got like a bad back, so riding bareback is doubly bad for me. But we can go saddleless, and it's really cool. It's a very different experience from riding in a saddle because you
Hmm.
It
really
really
feel
is.
the movement of the horse, and you feel where the horse's like natural center of gravity is, which is
Yeah.
actually further forward of where you're put in a saddle. So like pretty
Oh,
much
really?
any
Yeah.
horse will pull you forward kind of onto their withers, which is why you don't ride bareback on a shark fin withered horse, because
Mm-hmm.
then you will have that experience that I was saying earlier. I was like, oh, that would be super uncomfortable. Like ride
Yeah.
bareback on a thoroughbred, and yes, that's the experience you're basically having.
Mm.
But riding without tack if you're a dude. Like, legless. Ouch. I don't see how that works for
Yeah.
him. I mean, I'm sure there are dudes who ride bareback. I mean, you watch Indian Relay, which is this incredibly amazing sport where they ride the horses bareback as fast as they can run, and they do it
Oh,
relay
shit.
style, but the horses are the relays, so they like go jumping off these horses at incredibly high speeds and then jump up on the next one. It's incredible. If you like,
Oof.
yes, it's an incredible
Yeah.
sport. It's so cool. You should look it up. And yeah, it's just amazing.
It's wild.
I think it's originally from the Lakota, but I don't remember. I just know that it's incredibly, incredibly cool to watch. So, and I mean,
Yeah.
those dudes are like riding horses at a full out gallop. So clearly you can do it if you have the physical training. I'm sure their legs, like, man, they must have the best seats known to man. Like, to be able to sit a horse going that fast with no saddle, just mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just tip off the side.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
I do love that Tumblr post about
It's so funny.
Legolas and what and I love the idea that Glorfindel needs to use tack on Asphaloth because he's such an asshole
Yeah.
of a horse.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I think there's a couple of mentions in the Silmarillion about elves having horses with tack, but it is definitely
Mhm.
not universal one way or the other. And I do think that it's a show-off stylistic choice with Legolas.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so funny.
Yeah.
Also, in defense of myself, I was sexualizing Gigolas, not necessarily horses.
I mean, yeah.
That's a different play. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different episode, right?
That's Equus, not anything else. Yeah.
Another show that a lot of people went to see because an actor
Of
from a popular movie was in it, and a very different
Mhm.
experience
In
than the
a very
Hidalgo
different
experience, sort of.
experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Uh, I like the idea of, like, that Asphaloth is specifically, like, an asshole horse that Glorfindel somehow still riding when everybody else is sort of like, "What the hell? Why would you have him?"
And
Basically.
Right?
Glorfindel's
And
like,
like
I killed a Balrog. Fuck off. I can handle
Yeah.
this.
I can
right,
handle
and
this,
like
dude. Yeah.
he could kill the Balrog because he's used to dealing with Asphaloth.
Exactly.
But he was like, Balrog, that's nothing. I have this devil
It's
horse.
nothing. Yeah,
Um,
this stupid horse.
Well, because there's also something mentioned in the Silmarillion, I forget where, but it's like splitting the difference, right? Where it's like, well, the elves rode horses bitless, but they had like
right.
decorative headpieces or like
Headstalls. Yeah.
Right,
reins and maybe saddles and stuff, but
right.
they just didn't control horses using a bit.
Yeah, so apparently he kept changing his story, and I actually think this is in
Yeah.
that Tumblr post where they're like, it's unclear because dude just kept changing his story. Like, and there are times
Shocking.
where
I
Yeah, I
mean,
was gonna
that's
say, Tolkien
everything.
contradicting himself?
right.
Ha
What?
And I
perish the
almost think
thought.
there was a case where he like said one person rode with tack and then later said without, and like
Without
just all kinds of stuff. Which, yeah, I mean, it's Tolkien. He had so much in his head. Like, how could he keep it straight?
It seems like it's the best idea in a war situation, which, I mean, what is the Silmarillion than a story of many wars?
endless wars.
You would want tack on a horse then, so you would know what side that horse belongs to, right?
Mm,
Well, I mean, unless you can just tell by the person on it is wearing a uniform.
If the person is, like, thrown off of the horse, and it's a horse from the opposite side, would you not then want to kill the horse?
No, you'd take that horse. That's a horse trained for
Yeah.
war.
Fair
You
enough,
just
fair
steal
enough.
that thing.
hey,
Hell yeah.
that might be like spoils.
Spoils of war. I mean, stealing horses is like a thing that people have done on battlefields.
Yeah,
Kill the other side's horses.
it's like stealing, like a
Tank?
cannon or like a tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
yeah.
you can weaponize, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough,
It's
fair
already
enough.
trained, like, yeah.
Side note, 2 of the letters where Tolkien talks about, like, how the elves ride horses and tack and whatever, I have looked it up and I haven't pulled the letters yet, but it's, letter 211 and letter 297. He talks about this topic, so if any of our listeners wanna go do some research for themselves and, you know,
And
join in the
report back
debate.
to us.
Cait, I know that you love the Silmarillion far more than
I
Lord of
do.
the
I like it so
Rings.
much better. I didn't reread it on the recent read through that a bunch of people did, which means I have
Yeah, we just finished.
yeah, I have obviously forgotten most of what I've ever read, but yes, it's I love
Are
it
there
more than
any horses or horse-related things in
oh
Silmarillion
gosh.
that you want us to make reference to or touch base
I don't
on?
think so. I didn't the times that I've read through Silmarillion, I haven't been reading through for horses and I've gotten really hung up on like Huan and yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's been more about the dog for me.
The bestest
Um,
boy,
the bestest
the
boy
goodest
until
boy.
he's not. And then you're like, "How
Yeah.
could you? How could you betray your person? A horse would never." Um,
I'm like, oh, his person's Luthien. Like that's how I
Yeah.
feel
oh,
it. It's
okay.
like
Once he
so
realized
his
his
Yeah.
person is a dick, he's like, "Nah, I'm good."
yeah, he's like, oh, this guy's an
Yeah.
asshole.
Yeah,
Bye.
Like,
Yeah,
"Fuck
that's
you, I
fair. Yeah,
disavow you, I like her."
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think one of the things that is interesting about the Silmarillion and horses is that, like, a lot of things are sort of oblique references that we have to pull information out of, and not just in horses in the Silmarillion, but, like, the Silmarillion is often very, very, like, big overview of things instead of granular details with a lot of story, right? But you do get that some of the horses that we encounter in Lord of the Rings and throughout Beleriand and everything are descended from horses that come from Valinor, or that, one of the Valar are like riding and give to people, because I think it's Orome has a
Hmm.
horse, like,
Yes.
kind of right from the beginning, and
Hmm.
all of that.
Yeah, they're a specific breed, and like by the time you get down to Lord of the Rings era, isn't it like very few of them are left, but Shadowfax is one of
He's
them.
one of
Is
them,
one of
right?
them,
And that's
yeah,
why
of the
that's
Mira.
why he's the king of the horses, is because he's a throwback to these like ancient
The
bloodlines that were
mayoress.
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Tolkien having some problematic ideas about bloodline and
Oh,
nobility again? What?
shocking.
Yeah.
What?
How
I'm shocked.
interesting. But no, I think it is kind of cool that the history of the horses in Middle-earth and everything, and that they were, like, native creatures in Middle-earth as opposed to being brought later, and that's just something, like, being living in America, that's something that's interesting to me, because, like, we tend to think of, like, "Oh, well, horses all over part of American culture, cowboy culture and everything," but horses weren't indigenous to
Yeah.
this area, and they were brought by colonizers and changed the way that indigenous populations interacted with each other and with colonizers, and all of that. And so it's very, like, complicated to get into the history of horses in the United States and North America. So it's interesting remembering that this is based on sort of a European model where, yeah, horses were always around. Of course, they're native to Middle Earth. Like, no
Yeah, they were
no
literally
big
brought there
complicating
by
factors.
Orome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is really shocking to me that Tolkien really leans into that. Well, this particular thing went over the sea and it came back and now it's your lord. How many times he does that over and over and over and over again. I cannot wait until we
Yeah.
do an episode that's just about colonialism.
Oh boy.
Jesus
Okay,
Christ.
yeah.
Yeah.
And by I can't wait. Ugh. Oh my god.
You're gonna need like 3
Can't
hours
wait.
to do that one
Gunshot
at
noise.
least.
Yeah. Oof.
There's just gonna be so much cringing as we research on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of cringing, and we'll also have a lot of our friends and their work to look at, because
Yeah,
they're doing a lot of
there's some
that
great
research
work
as
that's
well.
happening right now.
So, yeah, a lot of cringing together.
Yes. Yup.
Kate, do you have any last thoughts before we kind of wrap up here?
Um,
This has been an awesome conversation. Like I say, this has been super duper fun.
I
I
love
I love
I love
I love
anytime I
talking
get
about
to
this.
talk about horses.
Yeah. I feel like it's a rich topic, and I feel like we kind of don't see enough of people like really exploring the kind of the nitty-gritty sort of implications and stuff of horse girls.
Yeah, I'm super interested to read some of the like articles that Alicia found. Those sound
Yeah.
like super interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I talk about the ecological implications of horses, so why not then also take up as a special interest the social implications of horse girls? Why not?
Yeah.
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 There should be more people
Big time.
digging into that topic other than just that one girl.
Yeah, there really
Yeah.
should. There should be more people.
There are so many horse girls. They've gotta do
Well,
some
Indeed.
more,
and
More scholarship.
and there
more
are
scholarship.
so many other, like, obviously that I assume she's American, right?
I'm assuming so. I did look her up, but it's been a minute.
Yeah. But like it would be a super interesting topic outside of like Eurocentric. I mean, there's like a whole other world out there full of people who have ridden horses way longer than the Europeans.
100%.
Yeah. And yeah, that would actually be super interesting too. Is like if the horse girl trope even exists in some of those places.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Mhm.
if it's very much like a product of the culture in which the horse girl trope was born.
Yeah. Oh, that's a fascinating
Yeah.
question.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
it be interesting? I want to
Yeah.
know.
I have one last question for Kate.
Yeah.
How accurate do you think Tolkien is in his depiction of horses?
Ooh.
I mean, I think mostly he does a lot of hand waving and calls them magical horses so that he can get away with
Fair
Sure.
enough.
it. That's what I think.
That,
Sure.
yep,
So, like,
that tracks.
I mean, one of my favorite examples of like poking fun at how fiction of any kind treats horses is, I think, was it Diana Wynne Jones wrote like Survival Guide to Fantasyland or something?
Yes. The
And
tough
there's
guide to
Yes,
Fantasyland.
and there's
Uh-huh.
something, as I recall, something about horses in there that's so tongue in cheek. I think that's where it's from. I've since read it on Tumblr. I remember I read that book a long time ago. But yeah, I think generally most fiction gets horses wrong
Mm.
because, like, it's not very convenient to get them right. Like, I mean, somehow these animals have survived since before the Ice Age, but you look at them with a funny look on your face or change the weather too fast and they get a stomach ache and die. So, like,
Yeah. If you float a balloon near them,
right,
they like, "Oh
yeah,
god."
like,
Yeah.
they're really weird animals because they are so resilient. Like, mustangs, I mean, are these incredibly resilient animals. You'll go out and you'll see a mustang with a broken leg that has clearly been broken for a while and it's been hobbling around three-legged, and of course the reason it's still alive is because wolves don't roam anymore. But
Mm.
still, like, that is a resilient animal.
Yeah.
I did find that delightful Diana Wynne Jones quote that was being mentioned. And we should put it in the show notes because it's a whole like couple paragraphs long. But the part that I think I enjoy the most is she's talking about they never stumble or and nor do they make life difficult for tourists by biting or kicking their riders or whatever.
That's
They
right.
never resist being mounted or blown out so that their girths slip or do any of the other things that make horses so chancy in this world. And then she goes into fantasy horse reproduction,
Oh, that's right.
that no mare ever comes into season on the tour and
Right.
no stallion ever shows an interest in a mare, and
Yeah.
few horses are described as geldings. It therefore seems probable that they breed by pollination. This theory seems to account for everything, since it is clear that the creatures do behave more like vegetables than mammals.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I think they may be more realistic slightly in the movie, just in that
They had to use
they're
actual
actual real
horses. Yeah.
horses.
They're
Yeah, they had to use
real
actual
life
horses,
horses
and so
there.
like sometimes you'll catch in the background like a horse pinning its ears at another horse, and that's like super realistic. Or
Mhm.
like, in the cavalry scenes where you've got one horse just piecing
Like,
out
going
and
out
like
like,
rearing up,
"Nuh-uh."
and its rider is clearly like, "Oh Jesus, what have I gotten myself into?" Doing Hail Marys. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think I often just suspend my disbelief when I'm consuming horse media because it is super fun to take the piss out of media over horses sometimes, but then other times I'm just like, no, I want to believe they're magical.
Aw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are a really fascinating contradiction and, like,
Oh,
'cause,
yeah.
like, yeah, they're gigantic prey animals. It's sort of like their instincts are to run away, and
Right.
to get away from whatever is the threat. And it's kind of like when I talk about like rabbits to people as like companion animals, I'm like it's a different experience than like with dogs and cats because dogs and cats are predators, rabbits are prey. And so it's a different relationship between the human predator and a prey animal that
Mm.
can be really rich and rewarding, but also you have to do a lot of listening to each other. And there's a lot more
Yeah.
give and take that you kind of need to do to develop that relationship of trust because you're interacting with very different instincts and they're very, very different ways of being, you know?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Horses, the human relationship with horses kind of fascinates me because on the one hand, yeah, they're prey animals. And so you have to learn to think more like prey and see the world more like prey. On the other hand, they're the only other animal that we like interact with on the level of a pet or a partner or something like that as something other than just food that is another essentially pack animal.
Yeah.
So
Or
like
like a tool, I guess, in a way. That's sort
well,
of
yeah,
like
so they're like they are predispositioned to form bonds with other animals, kind of the way dogs are. Like
mhm,
dogs live
mhm,
in group, that instinct of dogs is generally to live in groups. The
mhm,
instinct of horses is to live in groups to the extent that like if you have a horse without another horse, they can get really crazy.
mhm, mhm,
Even if they have like a donkey or a goat or something, like they
mm,
still can get pretty unhinged if they don't have another horse.
mm,
And
mhm.
so I think it's really interesting to like compare and contrast the relationship that we have with dogs to the relationship that we have with horses.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm really kind of fascinated by like the domestic animal sort of relationships with humans
Yeah.
and kind of all of the kind of complications sort of inherent in it. And
Yep.
but also like kind of like on the same level as dogs where they're tools.
Yes.
they're creatures that are used for specific purposes and also as
As
companion
companions.
animals,
Yeah.
which is they're very different relationships, and
Yeah.
that level still exists, when companion animals kinda didn't weren't really, like, a super widespread thing. Like, I
Right.
mean, I think we've been calling dogs doggies and kitties since, we first came out of the caves,
Yeah.
but, I mean, it's sort of like we've had a very, very long relationship with horses and with
Yeah.
dogs that I think look a lot like each other.
Yeah. There's actually been some really cool research. So if you've ever heard that the last wild horses are the ones on the Asian steppe,
Mm.
they're
Mm.
called in Mongolian, they're called taki. And it's easier to say than the name that the Russians gave them when they colonized. And for the longest time, science said that those were the last remaining wild horses. Mustangs don't count, they're feral.
Mm, mhm.
Well, they started looking at the genome of Taki and they started noticing like signs of domestication in their genome and
Wow.
eventually
Mm.
came to the conclusion that actually those are technically long time feral, like
Long ferals.
such a long time
Wow.
that's a different species. It's Equus. I can't remember that like they're a different species,
Hmm.
but that they were once belonged to people.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
That's
been some
wild.
really cool research in the past like 5 years or so about the Taki and how like that they were domesticated and yeah, that kind of thing.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild to
And
me.
they actually recently found I think also maybe somewhere in Asia the oldest saddle, frame saddle that they've ever found.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you know how old it was?
Let me look it up real quick. It was
Yeah, let's find out.
As you're looking that up, like, I was realizing, like, I think I've just colloquially always used feral and, like, thought it meant wild, and I'm having this, like, cool nerding out moment of realizing, "Oh, no, it actually has a specific meaning of, like, wild after escaping from captivity or
yeah,
domestication or whatever." Like, "Oh, I didn't realize this. I'm learning a thing. This is cool."
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was dated to between 727 and 396 BC.
Wow.
Wow.
which is pretty cool. And I think they've found that's a soft saddle. And then they've also found evidence of being ridden on like some recent horse burials
Oh.
they've found. They're
Mm.
like, oh, people were actually riding these things, not just using them as pack animals. So it's assumed that
Mhm.
the first horses that were domesticated were used as pack animals.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That makes
I
sense.
joke around that there's almost no doubt in my mind that the first person to ride a horse was a teenage boy who looked at the horse and was like, hey, instead of putting a bag on that thing, I'm going to put me on that thing. Hey, watch, guys, look, do you dare me? And his friends were like, yeah, I dare you. Maybe it was who knows? I want to poke fun at stupid teenage boys. Could have been a stupid teenage girl.
I was gonna say maybe it was the first horse girl.
Maybe the first horse girl.
Ah!
And went and hopped on it, and yeah, and the
They
rest
had a
is history.
magical they had a
Right,
magical
yeah,
moment
I
yeah.
mean, I
and
do have
hopped on.
to say, like, in favor of this theory, all of the people that I know who routinely, like, ride horses bareback or have trained their horses to be so that they can stand on them while riding are
Yeah,
horse
I
girls,
was gonna say.
not cowboys. So, like,
Yeah,
just saying.
yeah,
Yeah. Horse girl started it all. I'll say it here now.
This
yeah.
may just be my personal bias, but or like the bias of my experience, the limitation of
Yeah,
my
no, that does
experience, but in
actually
my
make a lot of
experience,
sense.
yeah.
Horse girls,
Yeah, I
domesticated
mean,
horses.
I've definitely
Mm.
tried to stand on Rocket before. Not while he's moving because I don't have a death wish, but I've definitely kicked my shoes off and stood up on his saddle. I don't want to dig my feet into his back because like we both have bad backs,
Aw.
Yeah.
but yeah, I've definitely seen horse girls do their fair share of extremely stupid things.
Molly, the horse who will let people ride her bareback, is also trained that people can stand on her to ride. This
Wow.
is not something that they let us do when we are just visiting the ranch, but like
Yeah,
the person who is her person can do this.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I've ridden Rocket backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's always like, "What the hell are you doing? You're sitting the wrong way around. Taking time, you're
Like, this
sitting
is the
wrong."
view you're choosing?
Yeah, like,
Okay.
alright.
Right? Yeah.
Whatever. Ugh. If nobody else has any last thoughts, maybe we should wrap up.
Joke.
Kate, this has been such a
Yeah,
fantastic
it's been a
conversation.
blast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime you want to talk about horses, you just let me know.
Oh, hell
Okay.
yeah. Would you like to tell our listeners where they can find you on the internet if you would like to be found?
I actually don't know that I can still be found on the internet.
Okay, totally valid.
I haven't been on Twitter in a long time. I mean, if you search my name, you'll find my LinkedIn and like probably my ResearchGate
I
profile.
was gonna say only if you want to
Yeah, no,
share. I just
it'll be all my science stuff, but yeah. Yeah, you search my name online if you want. Read
you
scientific
can
articles that I've written. That sounds like a good time, right?
you can Google me. That's fine.
Right, yeah, you can
Whatever.
Google me, but I had a Twitter, but I haven't updated in a long time.
Completely valid.
I have a Tumblr. It's a singer of songs.
We will be sure to drop a link in the show notes for our listeners if they
Yeah,
are curious, but
that's the best way to do it 'cause yeah,
look for Kate on her Tumblr. I
yes.
think it's called A Singer of
Yeah,
Songs, if
it's
I'm not
a singer of songs and there's dashes between each word.
perfect. Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
coming
much for coming on. This
on.
was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Alicia, would you like to do our
Yeah,
outro since we
sure.
keep making you?
You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, and basically anywhere you consume podcasts, or you can stream our episodes directly from Zencaster. That is zencaster.com/queerlodgings, a Tolkien podcast with hyphens in between all of those words. Please leave us a rating and like, share, and subscribe. It does help us more than you probably know. You can also head to queerlodgings.com and see our individual episode resources, our lists of recommended books, and our merch shop, which is brand new. You can find us.
And
Oh, yeah, the
transcripts.
transcripts. How do I forget
Yes.
about the transcripts?
And transcripts.
Yeah, the transcripts are for our earlier episodes. We are working on catching them up. It takes a long time to transcribe Tolkien's words. If you listen to our 1-year anniversary episode, you would know why.
Oof. Yeah.
You can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook. We are on Twitter at queer_lodgings. We are also on Blue Sky. If you have anything you would like to send to us, you can also send it via email to queerlodgingspodcast@email.com. We always enjoy seeing your emails.
Also, we recommend checking out the Mythopoeic Society's online midwinter seminar in 2024. It's going to be February 17th and 18th via Zoom and Discord. You can find that on the Mythopoeic Society's webpage, mythsoc.org/OMS. And your podcast co-hosts here also happen to be the co-chairs of this particular academic event. So it's a virtual conference centered around queerness and fantasy, sci-fi, speculative fiction, other mythopoeic works. And our guest of honor is going to be Taylor Driggers, who, if you recall, was our first guest ever on the podcast. So there's a lot of really exciting things coming up for that, and we would love to see you there.
Yes, please.
Registration is $20 a person. It's an online event, and it would be amazing to have you check it out.
Some of the papers we've got in for that event are so good, and I'm so excited.
Oh, so good.
Ugh.
I'm super excited.
It's going to be freaking amazing, you guys. So please don't miss it. Please come and hang out with us because we've got lots and lots of really cool people, lots of our friends, and we're really excited to bring you guys some of this stuff. It's going to be really cool.
I should have put in a horse girl paper.
Yeah, you should.
Bummer. Bummer.
This is definitely a moment of be the change you want to be in the world, and specifically holding space for the work that everyone is already doing and making sure that we have as many spaces as possible to raise our voices and make sure that we are heard. So we're really excited for all the folks who are presenting papers as part of this. And even if you didn't get a chance to submit a paper idea, we would love to have you come and be part of the audience to share this.
Yes. Yay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Some things are best left between a girl and a hoe.
Also, we recommend checking out the Mythopoeic Society's online midwinter seminar.
Midwinter?
The Midwinter. The Midwinter
Midwinter.
seminar.